Hi, welcome to this week's episode of What You've Been Looking For. Here we are, me, Gary, and Nat together again. And this week we're talking about people pleasing. I need your validation. What happens when we people please? Hopefully you're enjoying these episodes we're sharing. So we're getting lots of feedback now about what to cover each week. So if you have things you'd like us to share then and talk about them, please do let us know. Information in the website, in the Facebook group. We're all on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on Instagram. So yeah, hook up with us wherever you want. But for today, let's get into this topic. So Gary and Nat, where do you want to start with people pleasing?
Well, it was a super popular topic, wasn't it, when it was put out? So I'm hoping this is going to resonate for lots of people, and it definitely resonates for me. So I'm looking forward to what's going to come out of the conversation. It still comes back, I think, to this sense of conditional well-being. What seems to be underlying in this whole chat is around, when I do this, then I'll be okay. So I feel that what underpins people pleasing innocently is the idea that if I can make these people happy, however many there are, then I'm going to be okay. Would you say that was kind of relevant?
Yeah, I mean, I think it all stems from this belief that you're not good enough somehow, that you're not enough and that you're not worthy. And if I please somebody, then I get something back from them that completes me, that makes me whole. And it's in the action of, if I do this, this person's going to like me, appreciate me, give me what I want. For me, here, it sometimes feels like it's almost like a little bit of manipulation. That people pleasing is you trying to manipulate somebody else into liking you, and you're showing up in a way that is inauthentic to do that it's false, because and then you just don't get what you want because you're not showing up in a way that's authentic. Does that make sense?
Completely. Yeah, it occurred to me that it's a form of dishonesty, isn't it? It's a form of lack of integrity. And arguably, we're almost lying every time we open our mouths, because we're always conceptualizing the minute we say a word. So we're immediately making life not true by speaking about anything at any time. But really with this, that kind of dissonance between an inner no and an outward yes. It's like every time we do that, there's like a crunch and a jarring. And sometimes we'll really notice it. Like, I don't know whether you guys have ever had a huge experience of saying yes to something that you really knew was wrong. I know that I've had probably more of like a very drip feed of saying yes to work that I perhaps couldn't do, or saying yes to social activities I didn't have time for, or just generally, I'll do more, and then, like you said, Nat, then I'll be okay, then people will like me enough, then I'll be included enough, and the endless nature of that. But I couldn't think of any like really significant, oh god, that feels properly wrong at a fundamental level, like a very obvious level. Looked like you had, Gary.
Well, just when you said it, there was two things just sort of popped in. One, I remember, I always go back to my first marriage, which I know is just like, I kind of knew that I shouldn't, got into the relationship shouldn't have continued. And it was a not a healthy relationship for both of us. And I was not, it was more about me not being in a healthy place. But I know that now through looking back. But at the time, it was just more like, oh, I don't want to marry this person. I don't want to be here. And but I'm going along with it because I don't want to upset this person. But the second thing that just sort of came into my mind at that point was also, I don't know it, it was going to happen anyway. It's kind of like there's that disconnect of, it's the story we're putting on afterwards as well, isn't it, that we're living in, that there was a whole story about it not being the right thing for me, but it happened. Now it happened, so it was going to happen anyway. So yeah, that just threw me a bit there, because I was trying to work out, well, hold on a second, what does that mean? Does it mean that we're never people pleasing, that it's not something that we actually do, it's just a story we put on afterwards, that we were people pleasing or we're not getting our needs fulfilled? But it wasn't going to happen any other way than it happened, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
might be out principling with myself, but
yeah. I've definitely experienced it in the work environment, because I think I had and still have some thinking around hierarchy, around if someone is seemingly more important in the hierarchy of work, then pleasing them felt like the most obvious thing to do, when it wouldn't feel like that to other people, but for me it did. It was like, well, obviously I've got to make them happy, otherwise my sense of security is going to feel like it's threatened.
And yeah, very common, and I've worked with people before who are like overwhelmed with volume of work. Very often at the bottom of that is the people-pleasing tendency that says yes to stuff that there isn't capacity for. And then, and it's fine, like people will always recognize that in the end, whether it's because like by saying yes, they keep getting more work, or they keep getting promoted, or they keep being given more responsibility, until it gets to the point where it's like so huge it just can't be held anymore, and then it will happen, like a burst of that bubble will happen, and you'll come back into clarity and you'll start to go, whoa, hang on, how did I get here? What's happened here? But I guess the other way we can be woken up from it is by the opposite, where we keep being rejected, or we keep not being given. You know, the more we seek to please, the more we're pushed away, or the more we're not promoted, not given opportunities. And again, another opportunity to see what's happening, rather than thinking, oh, it's me that's wrong, like, you know, I'm not good enough for that promotion. Actually, it's the desperation of the need it's coming from that creates that dynamic of being told, no, you're not getting the promotion, you're not getting the responsibility.
It feels like a really brittle way to live, and I feel like this conversation is part of one around perfectionism and unrelenting perfectionism. I know that we talk about that we have spoken about things like that before, and the flip side of it for me is that this sense of perpetual people pleasing will somehow shield me from any criticism and anything that might be perceived as negative about me and my identity, because God, that would really hurt if I was criticized. And I have certainly experienced that in my professional career, whereby if I was ever in receipt of anything that I would perceive it to be critical, it would hurt an awful lot, because I've taken it really to heart, because I had an idea that I had to be perfect all the time, and that's not going to work, is it?
Yeah, and I guess kind of relates to Annabelle in the Facebook group. That's a whole new social app we can create. She was asking about where does it start from, and I really hear in that you're saying about the beginnings of it come from childhood. At that time, it really looks like, I need to do what these big people say and please them, because if I do, I get fed, I get a home, I get warmth, I get cuddles. And so it really looks like at that stage that our well-being relies, it doesn't actually rely on those things, but it really looks like at that age that it does. And then it just gets carried forward, doesn't it, in the mind? It just keeps playing that same tape and regurgitating that same story and ad infinitum. And the other aspect to a question was around, as we get older, then does it get worse? Does it intensify? And it's certainly so from my personal experience of what I've seen from people I work with, that's the case. It's like we get to this sort of middle-aged 30 to 50-year-old-ish, when the pattern's repeated so many times, when the dissonance has become so great, when the holding of it can't be held in that way anymore, and something has to give, you know, and something will give one way or another. But it's like the need to release that story, the need to.
Well, I mean, childhood issues are the basis for a lot of problems, aren't they? I mean, I think I heard or read something about a lot of childhood problems start from, you know, who did you seek approval and love from your parents? I mean, who's the one that you seeked it from the most, and who did you have to be to get it?
Right.
And then look at your behavior based in that light. And if you were somebody that, so here it was pretty much, you know, I had a condition where I didn't have a second parent that I was looking for approval from. So it just wasn't there. So for me, it kind of manifested in a way that I was trying to be everything to everybody a lot of the time to try and get pleasing, because I didn't actually have the anything framework to base it off of. That and some of my problems in life have been because I've looked towards having a father figure that didn't exist, and I've manufactured what that would be in my head, and then I've manufactured who I need to be to get that approval, and had lots of sometimes look to the wrong kind of father figure to give me guidance and be the kind of person in that relationship as well.
Yeah, wow. There was something came into my head as you were saying that bit, and it's gone again. But in the first bit, I really heard about that, the chameleon nature we can adopt, and which can look like such a successful strategy for so long, can't it? Like, yeah, if I'm like this with these people and like this with these people, then look, I can duck and dive and dodge and weave and be the right person for who I'm with. It's just reminded me of, so when I was growing up, I grew up in Scotland, but my parents were English. We moved there when I was 3. So when I first went to school, I spoke with an English accent. And me and my sister were both the same. We both got picked on for being English. As we know, the Scots aren't mad fans of the English. So we came home having adopted a Scottish accent because that looked like the way to survive in school. And then came home to parents who were like, why are you talking like that? You're not Scottish. Put your normal voices back on. And so we did. And we spent our childhood switching back and forth between friends and parents, which then meant it was really difficult when you were with both at the same time. Do this weird combined accent thing, which both were probably like, what is that? But yeah, I guess an example of perhaps an extreme example of what so many of us, and I know I went on in later life to, I'm like this with work people, and I'm like this with my friends, and I'm like this with my family, and oh my goodness, the huge lack of integrity in that, which we feel at such a deep level.
Yeah. And it's tiring, isn't it, having to adopt a different way of being for different people. Even if we feel it's a really good coping strategy, it's one that you need to invest an awful lot of energy and be vigilant about, otherwise. And like you say, you can feel and see through inauthenticity, even though it feels like you can construct this great act all the time. People can feel it when you're not being authentic, can't they?
Yeah, even if they're not actually consciously aware of it, there'll still be that like little yeah.
Also, it leads you down a route of not knowing who you are.
Yeah.
And which then intensifies the search. Because you've never had this, you've never kind of really gone in and looked for that source of self, and then you've tried to be all things to all people, and then you've never really kind of been able to say, well, who am I really? And then you spend a lot of time trying to work that out, which is what I did a lot in my life, was just trying to be one thing for all different people, so that basically they didn't reject me. And having a parent die is the ultimate rejection. It's the ultimate, like, oh, you rejected me, you died. I mean, and that's what it feels like at a 9-year-old. There's no choice there. Nobody chooses to die, but it's like, oh, it's a rejection at some level. And then it kind of gives you this that's a lot where the lost feeling came from, and the unsteadiness feeling came from, was not knowing that. And I flirted with like gang behavior when I was young as well. I mean, it's a common thing for boys who lose their fathers. I mean, I flirted a little bit with that. I flirted a little bit with other things, bit of shoplifting, flirted obviously throughout my life with drug taking and stuff like that, trying to fit in different groups and work out where I was in society and where I was in my peer groups and friends. So yeah, it has an effect. And the people pleasing side of it is, for me, it was just a strategy to try and be accepted.
I really hear in that the beauty of life, like wanting to bring you back to who you are.
Yeah.
So like flung from as a 9-year-old child into the depths of a parent's separation, and apparently lonely and alone, and then for the rest of your life is then, and same is true for everybody, yours was just like huge and extreme, but the rest of our lives is then that search to get back to who we are.
Mm-hmm.
And whether all those different things that we experiment with and play with, and well, let me try this and let me try that and let's see if it's there. I guess, hence the reason for the podcast being called what it is.
Yeah.
It's like it was always here.
Mm-hmm.
It was just that in that really compelling story of not enough and rejected, it really looks like it has to be found out there in other people and other activities and inclusion out there. And it was always here, but we're never told that. We like figure it out for ourselves, don't we, through all these different addictions fundamentally.
Yeah. And people pleasing at some level also is an addiction.
And
it's addiction driven again by scarcity of lack. I don't feel complete, so I need somebody else to tell me that I'm complete, that I'm worthy, that I'm whole, that I have value, and I might have to manufacture a version of myself to get that, and it's a losing strategy in the end.
Yeah, and yet people still be posting stuff and going, how many likes did we get for that post, or how many, it's still there, isn't it? That rush of, whoa, I just got that comment. So it's a mini validation, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but I've really had the experience of the emptiness of that as well. Like that in earlier years, like, oh my God, how many people have liked, how many people have retweeted, and the perhaps the momentary high of, oh, look, that's done really well. And then that desperate, oh, nobody liked that one. But actually, even if lots of people are liking and retweeting, still just that the unfulfilling nature of it.
Yeah.
Because it's not real. It's not the truth of the brilliance we are. It's this shadow of it, isn't it? It's like this secondhand, empty.
And ultimately, sorry.
You go, we always do this.
But I'd say ultimately, looking for that validation from the world in whatever form doesn't allow you to be who you need to become. It doesn't allow you to flourish. It doesn't allow you to shine in some ways, because you're not going to be able to get validation from everybody. I mean, that's a truth. You could put content out there if you're in this kind of work, you're a coach or you're somebody, even if a creator or an artist, you're going to put stuff out there and some people are not going to like it. And if you make it all about you, then you would never create anything. I mean, we wouldn't create this podcast if we thought that our sense of worth rests on it. Because sometimes we say things that are going to be uncomfortable for people, and sometimes we explore areas that are uncomfortable, and sometimes you might put work out there that is going to be uncomfortable for some people to read. And if you have a fear of doing it, if you have a fear of showing up in the moment in the way that you need to show up, then nothing will be created, and you won't. It's not you won't achieve anything in your life, but your life won't have that certain richness or deep flavor to it, and you'll constantly be holding yourself back. Sometimes we have to be able to have the fear of rejection to be able to create something that's worthwhile.
It's another steer on the path, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, no, not this way. This isn't yours. Go back. Try again. Another nudge.
Yeah. It's interesting because when we were talking before about the search, particularly in the idea of being lost or lonely, it can really look like that search is about pinning down an identity, as in, what is it that I'm supposed to do or be? What is my personality? And that looks really alluring as a search. But I think what we're saying is going through that, and then on the other side of that, to recognize that that's a story, all of it, not just like parts of it, the whole thing is a story. And when you really see that, it's absolutely mind-blowing. And yes, it's very mundane. It's that weird, extraordinary, mundane paradox thing going on, in the recognition that story that we've held on to for literally decades of our life and lived out suddenly can go, oh, that's no longer having meaning for me now. That's just not serving me. And then to see that there's a space that opens up that's not scary. It's actually a really great space of potential for newness.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like you said in that earlier example with your wedding, Gary, it's like without the story, there would just have been getting married happening.
Yeah, exactly.
And then that leads to the next thing and the next thing, and no narrative.
No narrative. Yeah. And the relationship might have ended up the way that it ended up anyway, but maybe without the angst, and maybe in a cleaner way, because there definitely was a fear of ending the relationship as well, because you go into the relationship and then there was I don't want to be here, and you try and you push those feelings aside and you push those thoughts away, and you want to try and make the best of it, because some of it, people pleasing, is also coming from a misguided, wanting to not hurt the other person. It's coming from this misguided good intention as well. But that just makes it worse in the end, because you're just dragging it out. It's almost like the ripping off the Band-Aid thing. But would I go back and do it again? Well, of course I would, because I got a wonderful daughter from it. So, you can't relive your life, and you can't go back and say, you shouldn't have happened that way, or live in that angst of it. And, I have no idea what the other scenario would have been, but it's more you end up living in the feeling of it, and the experience of it and the thinking of it. It just weighs you down as well. And like you said, Nat, that's where all the energy comes from. You just end up living in this space of, I wasn't good enough. People don't like me. I don't get any validation. I shouldn't have done that. And there's just no way to live.
Mm. Yeah. And in all that, I hear that really cool rebalancing of the system.
Mm.
Like, we don't need to worry about if we're people pleasing or not.
Yeah. Yeah.
Karina in the group asked a question about like that distinction between, well, how do we know we're actually pleasing? Well, it wasn't quite that, but her recognizing that sometimes people pleasing will come from a genuine, like, just it makes sense to please this person, to do what they want me to do, or to help them in some way from genuine gratitude.
Yeah.
Versus the people pleasing that might come from that idea of self that thinks, oh, I will be okay if I do this for this person. That salvation is at the other side of this activity. And we can get really lost and tangled if we try and figure out which of those are we doing right now. And sometimes you can almost feel it. So sometimes you could say, you get that inner knowing of an obviousness of something to do. There's nothing on it. It's done and it happens, and no questions, which is generally the natural gratitude, the natural yes. And sometimes you can really feel the dissonance of the people pleasing that's happening, because there's a desperation behind it, because there's an addictive quality to it. But there's lots of times as well when you can't know, like you could spend your whole day caught in analysis trying to figure it out and go, oh, am I saying yes because I really mean it, or am I saying yes because I think I need this? And even the fact you're analysing, you're already out of the moment, and it's already not going to be authentic, because you've gone into your head to try and figure out what's authentic. Authentic doesn't come from there.
Isn't it? Oh, sorry. Isn't it really about just being honest with yourself then? It's like, do I want something from this person, and being honest about whether you want something from them or not.
I don't know if it's always that obvious though.
No,
I've had experiences where like the self has really hidden itself cleverly, disguised as being an authentically good person.
Yeah.
And so the only navigation tool that I've recognized is the feedback from life. That it's when there's a rejection and it's felt like, oh God. It's like, oh, okay, so I was trying to get something from that to be okay. Or if it was a situation of, oh my goodness, more work, I can't handle it. It's like, oh, okay, there it is again, because it's snuck in as a, oh, I'm being really lovely and helpful. And no, you were thinking you were going to be okay by helping all those people. So for me, that's the only navigation tool really that's reliable, is that feedback from life that will show you if you're you're doing it for an insecure self rather than genuine authenticity. And the more you get into it, the more it's like little nudges. It doesn't have to be dramatic, explosions.
I'm thinking that people for whom this is a subject that's close to their own heart will probably be listening out for an answer and going, okay, that's definitely me. That sounds like it's really ringing true for me. What am I going to do? And the answer is not going to be what they think it's.
Yeah, there were two parts to that actually that, again, Annabelle, and part of her question, she's like, how do we stop it? But also, how do we not beat ourselves up for being in that place? Mm-hmm. So yeah, look at the first one first, maybe. How do we stop people pleasing?
Well, I would say that rather than it being a problem to fix, because these things often go that way, it looks like someone's presenting a problem, and to recognize that the problem is arising in the story. So the story looks like it's really true. And it's really awareness for me that is the transformational aspect of it, because the ability to step back, to notice and have perspective without being drawn into it, and then adding more layers of story, going, I just did that thing, I can't believe I just did that thing again, that's so awful, that's just me doing that people pleasing. Recognizing that just builds the story up, and the more you're in story, you're never going to get the sense of freedom that it is that you're seeking. It's very much in the space before the story, which sounds really nebulous and quite hard to grasp sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hear. I think the thing I really hear in that is that just it's the noticing. It's non-judgmental noticing. It's awareness. It's seeing it playing out, seeing it in your own life, and just noticing it. I think that's the point at which we can either get lost in further story and layering of what we shouldn't be doing, but oh gosh, look, we have. So
crack on.
Yeah. Or just the noticing, that's staying in that open awareness, isn't it? And just seeing it and noticing it and going, oh, okay, yeah, that's it. That's exactly it playing out. And not even having to then strategize for the future, not even then having to say, oh, okay, so next time I'm in this situation, I'll make sure I say no to that, or because then again we're back into the head, we're back into trying to live by a rule, and so we're switching out the rule of I have to please people to be included and changing it to, oh, I've now got to say no when it's right to say no. Oh golly, but when it's right to say no, it's just another form of conceptual mind.
Exactly. I suppose also, I mean, if you take the perspective that people pleasing is not about, if there's nobody there, there's no person there. I mean, that's one of the results of this understanding is we understand there's no person there, or there's nobody here and there's nobody there. So the only person I'm trying to please is myself, actually. And so if I realize that I'm just trying to do it to please myself, to try and help myself feel better about myself, then with the awareness of it all, then it will go away, because I'll realize, well, I'm only trying to please myself at the end of the day, and it's only me that I end up upsetting, because the strategy is a losing strategy, because I just end up not pleasing myself. So believing that there's somebody else over there, there's a person over there that I can actually please, is always going to be a losing strategy, because there's no one there to please. It's all me, so I can't please anybody else, because there's no one there to please. And that, with the awareness of the behavior or the pattern, then you start to see through it. You start to say, oh, okay, well, I'm not, how can I, but that doesn't mean that there can be a danger in that, or where you go, oh, well, if there's nobody there, it doesn't matter how I act. It doesn't matter how I show up. It doesn't matter what I say. It doesn't matter, but that's also not true, because even though here, there's nobody over there, that person is still bringing a sense of self to the relationship, and a sense of you to the relationship as well, which you need to take care of at some level. You need to say, okay, well, I need to do it in a way that's respectful, kind, compassionate. It doesn't give you a carte blanche to show up like an idiot or all the time. Although sometimes that happens, but it doesn't mean that you say, oh, because I'm not going to people please now, I'm just going to be really straight and direct with people and just tell them no and reject them all. That's also not true.
Yeah, well, that last bit, that's just the conceptual mind popping back in again. It's the ego or the separate self popping back in, trying to make up a new rule to live by.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, now I'm allowed to say no. Okay, I'll say no all the time.
Yeah.
Versus actually responding to this moment here.
Mm.
And I think, maybe to that how-to question, it's that looking to the awareness of it all and the seeing of how it all plays out, which naturally takes care of the in the moment experience. And it's that fine-tuning, and the more the stories are let go, the more that this moment is, we're present to this now and not lost in those conceptual ideas of, oh, is this one of those times I should say no or yes? Is this coming from ego or is this my true nature? Oh God, I don't know.
Yeah.
But the more we explore, the more the stories go, and the more the words come out perfect for now. And whether that's a yes or a no doesn't matter. It's not about that. Because equally, it's like because we don't know the whole system. There's a much greater intelligence running this whole show that can see the balance of things and can see what's needed. So, like, if the example of I can't remember if I used this on a previous episode, but the example of, like, if we were to put a bell around an antelope's neck to save it from a lion, where we think we're being really kind. Oh, look, we're pleasing the antelope because we're saving its life, but we're now, starving the lion, and so now the lions are all dying out, and the antelope are taking over the land, and all the grass is gone, and so now other life can't be sustained. So in our attempts to maybe please that one person, we don't know what the larger impacts are, and we from our intellect will never know that. We will never know what that right answer is. There is no such thing. And so in that going before the conceptual mind into awareness, whatever comes out is and ideally with no self in the way, but we can't know. So just whatever comes out is all that could come out in that time. And we just trust in that's like your marriage. That's all that could ever have happened. That's the only thing that could have been said. Take the analysis out of the equation. Take the overthinking out of the equation, or the is this the right thing? We can't know.
Yeah. And like you said earlier, unless you have the direct experience of it, I don't know. I don't have that feedback loop. And if consciousness is anything, or conscious awareness is anything, it's the ability to step back and see it, to have the feedback loop, so that so the body mind can learn. It can have an experience and go, oh yeah, that wasn't a nice experience. I need to not do that, and I'll do it a different way next time. And unless it's allowed to have that experience, which is coming from a complete non-judgmental space of the character not judging itself all the time, then it will never learn. It will always be caught in this this stuckness, this whirlpool of not being able to flow with life. And it's in the letting go and just allowing it to flow, and being the direct experience that you have an experience of learning and feeding back. And this is, we've said this before, that might mean that you have to have an uncomfortable experience, but it enables a more open, real, richer, fuller experience of life in that as well.
And it's funny because sometimes there's some kind of weird need to hold on to beliefs that don't actually serve us. And we're even aware when things are feeling really out of date, like the same things are looping over and over and over. And we're like, yeah, I know what I need to do here, or what needs to happen here. But there's something that's keeping me holding on to a story that's really gone way past its sell-by date. And that's the fear of, like, what am I without that thinking? You know, the fear of, oh, will I just disappear? I'm really scared about that. When actually it's a lot more simple and a lot more freeing than your conceptual mind would have it be, you know?
Yeah, all of that it is that childlike state, but without the. So whereas, because when you were talking, Gary, and that like pure experiencing of life and learning from it that happens as kids, and then gradually to how the idea of self appears, and so it starts to look like, oh, my well-being apparently relies on behaving in a certain way. So learning starts to slow down because we start to build those rigid walls and rigid rules. And then now the opportunity is like you're breaking down the rules, you're breaking down the walls. And so learning can go back to its natural state. We experience and we change and we learn. And I just got a real sense of that flourishing of life again. Now as an adult, recognizing, well-being never relied on those adults behaving in a certain way or giving me certain things. It was always part of the construction.
And it's really cool watching it in kids. I know I always name drop my kids in these things, but I was out on a little walk with my daughter this morning, and she's 5, so she's going through a little rebellious stage at the moment. I don't know if that's just the situation that we're in, or she's just, and she keeps saying things like, "Oh, I don't care, mummy," you know. And she said, "I don't trust you," to me this morning. I was like, that's a very adult phrase for a 5-year-old. But it's almost like she's testing out these, you know, I'm going to reject you and see how that feels. And then her persona will completely change and be like, "Oh, I love you, mummy. And she's testing out different ways of being, I think.
Yeah. See what reactions she gets.
Yeah. No, that happens. It doesn't stop. When they get into teenage years, it's exactly the same. It's almost like when they come into the teenage years, they regress back to that again. So you put all this work into it, and they get to the teenage years, the frontal lobes kind of melt down, and they just return back to that stage again. It's still there somewhere, but it's just got to be all relearned again.
Yeah. And I think when you become a parent, because I know Lizzie asked a question, didn't she, about pleasing even little ones, and the need to get it right and to make sure you're being a great parent all the time, but then that weird ambivalence of also feeling like, I've had enough of you, I've been with you for too long, I need a break from you. And then the guilt when they go to sleep and you go, "I'm really sorry, I love you, I do. It's really chaotic, isn't it, that experience?
It's maybe like a little daily microcosm of what could otherwise take weeks or months or years in a work situation or a friend situation. See, it's like such dramatic swings, isn't it? From, oh my God, I've got to be good enough for you, I've got to do enough for you and please you, and be a good parent. And then we swing to the, oh no, too much, stop it. Like you said before, Nat, it's that going through all of that story, going through all of those concepts and ideas of what even is a good parent, how could we ever know? And recognizing that any ideas we have about guilt or pleasing or what might be considered shameful thoughts or terrible thoughts for a parent to have, they're nothing. They're just thoughts. They mean nothing. It's just that mind believing that it's got a job to do in keeping you safe, chucking all sorts of stuff out there, and it's going through that, isn't it, to before those thoughts that we realize what's always there, what's permanent, what's constant, what's prior to any of it. I'm just noticing time already. I can't believe it.
It just always zooms, doesn't it?
It's gonna do a check. Say if anybody's watching and wants to
add any other questions
or experiences, that'd be really cool. I'm just gonna have a look as well at the questions we got in the group. Yeah, I think we've talked really about Karina's thing about like the dangers of pleasing from the separate self, from the ego, from a desperation, or from that learned behavior, whichever language, it's all the same thing. I wonder if we've also touched on that bit about, is people pleasing okay if it's done to like build a relationship with somebody, to get deeper with somebody, to get to a place of greater honesty.
Well, I can't remember who it was. Was it Nietzsche or somebody said like that? Your friends should your greatest friends should also be your greatest enemies. Some philosopher said that. That your friend should have the capability to be your enemy as well, to be able to tell you something, directly to you, right. Because otherwise, I wouldn't want a friend that constantly pleased me just so that they would be my friend. That would be a friendship that's based on based on separation again, based on not being one, not being the same, being different in some way, or trying to be different to please me, and it doesn't have a good feel to it, does it?
I love that sense of the respect that is available when we're actually acting as our whole selves and acting with integrity. I know that we've probably all been in this situation, or certainly worked with other people where they are such yes people that there is no respect for them.
Yeah.
Because they'll just say yes to anything. People will walk all over them because it seems allowed. That looks like what's allowed. And whereas from that individual's perspective, it could look like, oh, I need to say yes more. I'm not saying yes enough. Or it could look like, what do I do now? Because it's not working. People aren't respecting me. But it is in that, we need so much honesty back in the world so that we have more people around us like that friend, Gary, who will tell us just as it is.
Yeah. And I've certainly appreciated it in my life and with good friends who have told me how it is. Have said, and especially in intimate relationships as well. I mean, in partnerships, I want a partner who will tell me how it is, and I will tell them how it is as well. Because if your partner should be the person that is able to do that and let you know that, because again, it's part of that feedback. If you don't get the feedback, if somebody can't feel honest enough to give you that feedback because they're trying to keep you in a certain state, then it's limiting both yours and their growth as well.
And ultimately limiting us all from refinding here.
Exactly. So silent audience.
Obviously rapt attention.
Yes.
Another quote, probably less profound than yours, but that we can't please all the people all the time. It's probably so trite that we don't even pay attention to it.
Yeah, it's become a cliche.
Yeah, we spend so long trying to do that. And yet, even when we see examples of people who go different routes, who stand out, who are unique, and we see how life loves that. And yet still, so from the intellect, like you were saying, Nat, about, that the mind can't imagine life without its stories. So it can't imagine that there's anything available if it shuts up. But actually, and so it can't imagine how to be like that unique person. And that's because it's in the absence of that voice, isn't it, that we rediscover that it's never going to be found through that mechanism.
And yet that commentary is so compelling, but we only give it oxygen by attaching to it, don't we? It's so simple, the mechanism. It looks so complicated, but if you just stepped away and brought some gentle curiosity to say, is that really true? That's the stuff that opens up the space, isn't it? And it can be that simple.
Yeah, it's probably a nice note to leave it on, in terms of that kind of answers Bella's second question around how do we not beat ourselves up. And it's being open, gentle curiosity, isn't it? Knowing that we're all doing our best based on what looks real in every single moment, and always have been.
Cool. I think that might be a wrap. Is that a wrap?
That's a wrap.
Cool. So the podcast will be available from tomorrow on all your usual podcast channels, and it will still be available, of course, to view on YouTube. It's brilliant to see lots of people engaging in our What You've Been Looking For community on Facebook, so please come and join us there. We've had some nice chats about forthcoming themes. So I think we may be looking at trauma next week based on some of the suggestions. We'll double check that in the group. So yeah, thanks for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you again next Thursday. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.